You know, people out there, they talk about ECW originals, but it doesn't get any more original than the guy I'm sitting with, Don E. Allen. You were at ECW from the beginning and ACPW from the beginning. That's why we're here tonight. We're honoring some of our past in ACPW, but I want to talk to you a little bit about your career. What was it like being around ECW when it first developed, and did you get that vibe like something was in the air?
Definitely. Although I was trying to survive as much as I was feeding on the vibe. I got into the business training around 1988, and was training with a guy named Joey Maggs, who was a undercard wrestler for WCW, WWF, and he was from Baltimore. He had a school in North Wildwood, New Jersey. I'd finish work, drive a couple hours down to North Wildwood, wrestle in the cold with no heat in the back of Attila's gym down there, and come back home all beat up, and quit a few times and always went back. And then they closed. I was looking for some place to train. Wasn't that easy to find. Now there's a wrestling school on every street, but back then there wasn't. Joel Goodhart, who had a radio show called Wrestling Radio on WIP Radio, started a promotion called Tri-State Wrestling, opened a school. I went to the school, and from there he ran shows for a couple years, went out of business. I'm doing a really short version of this. That whole story could be an hour. And Todd Gore was one of his backers, right? So Todd took over the promotion, renamed it Eastern Championship Wrestling, and that segued into Extreme as Todd got more and more people with national reputations to come and work with him, including Paul Heyman.
So did it feel like your typical Philly indie? Because there were a bunch at the time, and the NWA was still running at the time. Like, or did you feel like, wow, you know, there's all these different ideas and vibes coming in?
I wasn't that attached to the indie wrestling scene at that point, so I was aware of it, but I wasn't going to shows. I was still going to see WCW at the Civic Center, and I would rarely go see Vince's stuff, but once in a blue moon. But I wasn't a follower of independent wrestling at that point. I just always wanted to somehow get into the business side of it. As time went on, I didn't really like the business side of it, but I love the wrestling side. But then I didn't know any better. So I was like, let me get in there. I don't care what I do. I'll work in the back. I'll carry somebody's gear. Maybe I could be a ref. Never thought I would wrestle.
Yeah, it turns out to be the case for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So early on, you were involved in an angle with Raven, the Blue Meanie, Stevie Richards. You actually even have a victory over those guys. What was it like being around those guys and Raven and his ideas? He had so many different ideas going. Was he? What was it like to work with that?
Well, people call him a genius. I don't know what the definition of genius really is, but I would put him up there. Just a great mind for the business. Somebody I met before I was working, when he was a trainee at Larry Sharp's Monster Factory, and I actually went to one of their tryouts, not to try out, just to watch. And he was Scotty the Body, so he was obviously a talent from day one. But it turns out he had a great mind for booking. And Paul Heyman gave him the leeway to basically book his own angles, which is unheard of. But that was part of the revolution that was going on in the business with ECW. So I was just lucky that I was in the right place at the right time. They saw a place for me to do something, to add just a little bit. We did the deal with Kiss, where...
Yeah, you were involved in the famous Kiss angle, huh?
Right. Well, A, they knew I was a musician. B, I didn't need a wig because I had long hair. They say, can you act like you play drums? I say, I play drums. I got drumsticks in the car. I always have drumsticks in the car.
Always got to have your boots, kids, and always got to have your drumsticks.
Always bring your gear. That's right. But it's true. So we, on the spur of the moment, they made me up. I wouldn't have known how to do it. I wasn't actually a Kiss fan. Don't tell anybody. I appreciate them, but they weren't my thing. And the next thing you know...
You don't want to go to the firehouse?
I think we're in the firehouse, actually. But... Anyway, it was just great. Steve Richards, who I knew from the get-go because I was already training when he started, and a great guy, and loved to wrestle and was really talented, and obviously has had an amazing career for himself. I was just honored to be trusted by them to be part of their gimmick for a little bit.
That's super. So you were there in the beginning of ECW, and you were also there in the beginning of tonight, ACPW, American Championship Pro Wrestling. Talk to me about these guys in their locker room.
Well, ACPW and Chris, he doesn't like to talk about him, but you know, I like to think that in a way they rescued me from a career that was winding down, because at that point this was around 2005, I think, and I had been working some independent stuff and not much was happening, and I was at a point age-wise and body-wise where I was thinking, you know what, maybe it's time to just segue out of this. This is a young man's game. But Chris had some other ideas. I had met him a few years before when he was doing setting up some rings and doing photography and different things for other promotions, and we became friends, and he kept me in the loop, and I was really so grateful that he did, because it gave me a chance, to go out and work. I mainly just jobbed most of my career, which is an honorable thing to do, and it's probably what I deserve to do talent-wise. But Chris thought, you know what? The places he's been and things he's seen, maybe he can add something to what we're doing, and he gave me a chance to do that. So, for 5 or 6 or 7 years thereafter, I was able to add a little bit, I hope, to his shows. And
Absolutely did. And let's do a little word or wrestler association. Go through. Wow, you've been in and out of the ring with tons and tons of amazing Hall of Fame wrestlers. Abdullah The Buthcher, you worked with him.
Yeah, yep. Didn't wrestle him, thank goodness, but managed him a couple of times, and that was a trip. I was so green that I wasn't as scared as I should have been, because I didn't know enough about him in the history. But he actually took care of me pretty good. It was him against Bam Bigelow, who may rest in peace. And Scotty was what a talent he was. Also, most of these guys, I was really lucky. Most of the guys that I worked with who didn't have to be were actually really, really good to me and gave me a little chance to shine. So
there was one match that you worked, and you had a WWE Hall of Famer and a guy who main evented WrestleMania in one match. Pretty decent work you had there as the third guy.
yeah, it's hard to imagine. Several Hall of Famers I've worked with. The
Jimmy Snuka.
Jimmy Snuka, the Dudleys, and Stan Hansen. Ivan Koloff, who should be in the Hall of Fame, but he's not yet.
He might be in the Legacy wing. I'm not positive.
Maybe.
Uncle Ivan.
It would take me an hour to try to think about all those.
You also worked with Chris Benoit and Woman.
Worked with Kevin Sullivan and Woman. I never worked in the ring with Benoit. Okay. We certainly shared the locker rooms when he was with ECW, but never worked with him. I worked with Kevin Sullivan and Woman. I also worked with Woman in the TWA even before that, when she managed DC Drake. Which, again, for the hardcores, they know who we're talking about.
Of course.
She was great, and again, great to me, involved me in ways that I didn't deserve for how green I was, and we miss her, and we'll always be grateful to her for that. And Kevin Sullivan was cool, too. They got me involved with Sherry Martel. She's another Hall of Famer, somebody I got to work with and get beat up by. So,
Another woman you worked with, I'm a huge fan, April Hunter.
Worked with April Hunter, absolutely. Another woman that beat me up. If you're sensing a pattern here, most of the women I work with beat me up. Luna, again.
I wish these women would beat me up.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you.
Well, okay.
Now this is how strange. I don't know, use this or not use it, but this is how strange the business is. Luna Vachon busted my eardrum and separated my jaw in a match. Not intentionally. She worked as snug as any male worker that you ever worked with. She was tough, she was strong, and when she was out there, she was so Luna out there that she, you just had to really be careful, because she would not stop. And so, we worked together a few times, and I got hurt a bit, and she apologized. I said, there's no apologies necessary. When you go out there, you understand that can happen. But she was a sweetheart to me all the way through, and there's somebody else that we lost way too young.
Well, Donnie Allen, we're going to go chat with some more of the ACPW future Hall of Famers. I'm sure we're going to get you up there next year.
The McIntyre brothers, these are good. I just want to.
Yeah, give us a couple ACPW story real quick.
Well, what can you say about Gemini? He's a force. What they say, Ty is a force, but Gemini, I mean, just a great dude. From my general community, lived nearby me. Met him in the early days of ECW, and got to work with him later. And just another great mind for the business, great guy to be around, and the Max. Well, first of all, one of my best friends as a child is Johnny Mac's dad, who passed away again, unfortunately, at an early age. Had nothing to do with the wrestling business. I knew him through music, and it was my honor to be his first trainer when he broke into the business, and Joe too. And of course, they've gone on and gone way beyond what I would show them. But they're great guys, and they were really fun workers to watch in the ring.
It's going to be an amazing night. Thanks for giving me a couple minutes, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. ACPW lives.